Now we're live. So, welcome, James Bruner, writer
Thank you
of
so much.
a lot of people's favorite films. It's nice to have you here. So, like I said, I've got a few questions about your movies. Let's start with the one trivia I found out that you prospected for gold in the Yukon Territory. Is this true?
Yes, very true. Out of college, I had a geology professor at the university who was famous because University of Wisconsin-Madison, was a big school, and
Okay.
he taught for $1 a year. It was like crazy. And the reason he did that is back during the Depression, 1930s, every summer he would get together with geology professor friends from around the world, and they would pick a place to go somewhere in the world and prospect for gold. And since they were geology guys, they knew where to go. He literally at his house had bottles like whiskey bottles that he emptied
Okay.
first, and then were filled with gold dust. And one day, one day in class, he said, "Well, so if anybody wants to know where to go prospecting for gold, come see me after class." So my best friend and I were in the same class. We looked at each other. We ran down, and he gave us two or three spots to go, and we thought one was in Central America, and at the time there was a pretty serious civil war going on. We thought, okay, that's probably not a good thing. And we lived in Wisconsin, so he gave us a place in British Columbia and the Yukon Territory, which we could drive to, a long drive. But so we thought, okay, let's check it out and do it. And British Columbia was a bust because it was built up and everything, and it had been mined out. But the place in the Yukon was still there and still wilder than you know. There were grizzly bear and moose and all kinds of fun things there. So we had an interesting summer.
Yes, that sounds fun. I think camping
Yeah.
out, I guess, and or is it a bit more upscale than hotels and stuff?
No, it was rough, rough camping. Just a tent and you know with catching fish or you
Right.
know catching food and so on. And we made it through the summer. We survived. We didn't come back with whiskey bottles full of gold, but we had a
Wow,
great time, and it
that's
was a good
amazing.
adventure.
Yeah. Is that when you wrestled a bear?
No, many people
Oh.
think that since we were, I wouldn't be if it was one of the grizzlies that we still have. When we first went into this place, uh, it was in the coastal mountains in the Yukon, and when we got off the main road, which was a dirt road, it wasn't paved, and we could see where there was a river coming out of the mountains. And even without binoculars, there was a gravel bar at the mouth of the river there, and we saw it looked like people. We thought there were people moving around, and got out the binoculars, and there were like 8 grizzly bear fishing. So we were like, "Oh my god, we're probably gonna die this summer." But so no, I would not have made it by there. But back in the day, there used to be a famous wrestling bear called Victor the Wrestling Bear, and when he wasn't performing on TV with professional wrestling, uh, he'd be going around to different sports shows in different states, and he came to where I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, a sports show, and my roommate at the time had talked me, and he said, "He's going to have the wrestling bear. We're going to go. I'll go first, and then you can see what I do, and you can go after me." I said, "Okay, I'll try it." And at that time, I was interested in being a professional wrestler, so I was about 50 pounds heavier than I am now, and in pretty good shape. So of course we get to the arena, it's a big sports show, and time to wrestle the bear. And of course the trainer picks me to go first. I'm like, oh, so
Sure.
I lasted. I'm sure it was less than a minute because he was like 600 pounds and just, he could wrestle, but once he got off balance and landed on top of you, he'd just go limp. There's no way he could move.
Ouch.
So it was a great experience, and it was actually a lot of fun.
Hmm. Oh, good. Yeah, because I'm a bit worried it was out in the wild and
Yeah, no, that would
Leonardo
it would have been a
DiCaprio.
short fight. Yeah,
Still, yeah, I'd have been on edge. So yeah, you've also written and directed a film, Ice Dreams, back in 2009.
yeah. I didn't direct that. My wife and I wrote the
Oh,
script for that.
this must be my information is wrong as usual. Oh, it's Hollywood.com you directed. So if I
Yeah,
scrolled over,
yes,
I would see my text. So yeah, that's 2007.
yeah.
What's
My wife Elizabeth Stevens and I wrote the script, and yeah, directed the movie. We produced it. On literally no budget, pretty much.
right?
Uh,
But it was
our
very well
biggest.
received.
I'm sorry.
It was very well received by the look of it.
It got some good reviews. We never ended up getting distribution, and
Ah,
honestly, it needs to be professionally edited. One of these days, we think we'll, be able to have it actually professionally edited and everything. But we got a good response from it,
hmm.
and it was a lot of fun, and especially when you're on no budget filmmaking, when the crew shows up on the second day you're shooting, that's the golden moment.
Nice.
We were driving to the set on day two. We thought, my God, no one's probably going to be there, and so it's going to be in. And everybody stuck it out, stuck with us, and we were able to finish the picture. So
Oh, that's nice. But yeah, you got to work with Shelley Long on Jerry Stiller in the Ice Streams one in 20.
yeah, they were terrific. Yeah,
Yeah, I tried to get a hold of those, but I didn't have time before this we set this up, so I didn't get to see them. But we'll go back to your first film, An Eye for an Eye with Chuck Norris.
yes.
How did that come about?
Well, as I mentioned, I grew up in Wisconsin,
Hmm.
and I ended up out here in Los Angeles just basically by mistake.
Right.
And because I had moved up to Seattle, I didn't like the rain. I was working with one of my cousin-in-laws up there, hanging sheetrock drywall, doing construction, and he turned out not to have a very good work ethic. I'd show up at 6 a.m. and he'd roll in at 10,
Oh,
and I had no idea what I'm doing. So that didn't work out. And then the rain got to me, so
hmm.
I moved down to Los Angeles. Another cousin-in-law, and he was doing, this is a few years ago, so basically slide presentations for corporations on how to operate a piece of machinery, or how to sell a product or something like that. So I'm taking the pictures and doing that kind of stuff, and uh, I had and then that didn't work out. Same problem with him, and so, but I was living at the beach out here, and I thought, I don't want to go back to Wisconsin. It's so nice
Hmm.
here. I was doing odd jobs, construction, wherever I could pick anything up.
Hmm.
And I met this girl who said, hey, uh, I had, and in college I'd taken movie courses, but we just watched Wild Strawberries and Virgin Spring. And, they didn't really we made movies on Super 8. And so it was really, nothing like what's available, now. And never thought really much of it. Always loved the movies. And, but I had written I have a degree in medieval history of all things.
Right.
And I wrote some articles for some wargaming magazines on historical battles. And also I knew Gary Gygax, who created Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
And I wrote some articles he at the time had a magazine called The Dragon. And I wrote some articles for that. So this friend said, well, you wrote these articles for magazines. Why don't you write a screenplay? I have a cousin at Warner Brothers, and I can show it to him. And I was like, oh, okay. And this was so long ago, way pre-internet and everything. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know a writer. I didn't know what a screenplay looked like or anything. And I finally, I went to see my dad in Wisconsin, at University of Wisconsin Madison Library. I found a book written during World War II. I took it off the shelf, opened it. Pages literally fell out of the ground. No one had ever taken it off the shelf.
Oh.
And it was How to Write a Screenplay. I thought, oh, okay, well, I had no idea if the format was still the same. I assumed it was. So I wrote a screenplay. It's going to be, I don't know how long, 6 or 8 months, something. I wrote a Western. And by the time I was finished with it, I had lost track of this girl. So I didn't know,
Oh, right.
what am I going to do? But I knew that people in Hollywood had agents, and agents basically were in Beverly Hills. So I drove to Beverly Hills and I found a phone booth back in the day with the yellow pages. And sure enough, there were agencies. And not knowing anything, I just started calling. Hi, I've got a screenplay. And everybody hung up. And down in the B's, I got down to the B's and somebody finally said, well, I'll read it, send it in. So I sent it in, went back to doing my construction, get a nice rejection letter a few months later, and say, that's not pretty good for your first time, but it's a Western. No one wants Western. You should do something contemporary. And I have a background in martial arts. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to write a martial arts movie, but it's not just going to be martial arts. It's going to have guns and all kinds of stuff. John Woo ended up doing those type of pictures years later in Hong Kong. So I wrote something with gunplay and explosions and martial arts and everything. And why I didn't go back to the original agent, I don't know, but I had met somebody that had actually worked in Hollywood, and he knew an actor that had actually been in a movie.
Mm.
And I said, well, your friend, read the script and just tell me, what he thinks. And so this actor got the script, called me up, said, hey, this is pretty good. He said, I just did a movie with Chuck Norris, and I know he's looking for another project. I want to give it to him. Like, oh, this is terrific. And so this is like January of whatever year it was. And a couple of months later, he calls back and said, well, Chuck read it. He kind of likes it. It was short. It was only 70 pages. in the meantime, I'd written another 25, 30 pages. So I said, well, I expanded the screenplay. And so I sent that in and didn't hear anything. And I was down to, I think I had $8.43 to my name, the rent due and all this stuff. And this actor, Mel Novak, a character actor, he's in a lot of action stuff, called me up on like on a Sunday and said, Chuck's going into a company called Avco Embassy tomorrow, and they're going to make an eye for an eye. They're going to buy the script, going to be an associate producer on it, all this stuff. I was like, holy. So that happened. And then part of my deal was to do a rewrite, be on the set. And all of a sudden, I kept waiting for the call from the studio to start the rewrite. The calling like every week said, they were like, yeah, just hold off. Finally, I called one week and said, oh, we already had it rewritten, so don't worry about it. We're going to pay you anyway.
Okay.
And yeah, don't come to the set. We're going to pay you. And so the movie got made, and I got invited to the cast and crew screening, and went with I had somehow met some stuntmen that worked on the movie.
Okay.
And at the cast and crew screening, they put me together on a blind date with a girl that they knew, that they had used to go and play penny poker at her house and mow her lawn for her, and she'd feed them spaghetti. Everybody was starving, starving actors, stuntmen, and so on. And they thought we'd hit it off. And we did. She luckily liked the movie, and we've been together ever since.
Oh,
and
that's lovely.
So, and we started working together, which has worked out great, and so on. That was like the really highlight of An Eye for an Eye.
Oh, that's
So that started that.
Because got some people in the chat. Backtrack Cinema, that's Jason. He's in Canada. He's a big Canon fan, action man.
Oh,
Mr. Dan and Horror's here, and yeah, Mr. Dan and Horror, he says, "I love an eye for an eye." Yeah. So how much did they change in the rewrite?
they
Is it
actually, it was one of those things where they didn't change that much,
okay?
actually, except again, I had Chuck's character was using a gun a lot and everything,
Right.
and they basically took that out and put in more martial arts, which worked out great in the movie.
Hmm.
But so they did that change, and then uh, that was kind of the biggest change that was made from the original script. And then, although a magazine, this is my first movie, so I don't know anything about the business, and I there was a action magazine that came out, action movie magazine. I think it was actually called Action, but cover story, an eye for an eye. And I thought, oh, I'm going to buy it. I'm reading it, and the producers talking about how he fixed the script and he put in the dog and he put in this and that. And they're like, no, that was originally in there. That was my first experience of executives, taking credit for things that already existed
Uh,
or saving a script.
yeah, obviously they're in charge. But okay, we got a question from Jason about
Oh,
missing in
sure.
action. Because is it true missing in action the beginning they made these two back to back, or did they? Because there's different writers for both, I'm guessing.
There's okay, missing in action. What happened after an eye for an eye? I thought the movie was successful.
Hmm.
So I thought, oh, I'm going to get all kinds of calls. I'm going to be writing all these scripts and everything.
Hmm.
Phone didn't ring ever. I was like,
Oh,
oh my gosh. And my now wife, but then girlfriend uh, knew Steve Carver, who directed An Eye for an Eye. And Steve invited her to a screening of not not the not the film, but the trailer for Lone Wolf McQuay that he'd just done with Chuck.
okay.
So Elizabeth took her mom, and they went to the screening, and Chuck and Aaron were there, and so on. And Elizabeth actually knew Chuck because our daughter Jennifer used to go to take martial arts from Rick Prieto, who was one of Chuck's senior black belts in the
Okay.
San Fernando Valley. And at the belt testing, Chuck would hang out with Elizabeth. So they were kind of friends from karate school. And
Right.
he knew that we were going up. So after the Lone Wolf screening, he came up to her and he said, "Hey, are you still going out with that guy, James Bruner, wrote An Eye for an Eye?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Could I have his number? Because I have something I want him to write." She was like, "Yeah, here it is." So Chuck called me up and he had written read a book called Mission MIA by J.C. Pollock, James Pollock, who later became a really good friend of Elizabeth Knoll, but different story. And Chuck wanted to do a movie about called Missing in Action about MIAs because his brother Waylon was killed in Vietnam.
Mm.
Aaron served in Vietnam. So he really wanted to do something at the time. There was nothing, Vietnam was like a real sore spot for everybody. And so I wrote the script, Chuck and Aaron had input into it and everything, and finished it. And it was quite a big action script. And Chuck took it around to everybody he could get it to. And I think if I remember right, the budget was like 10 or $12 million, which in those days was really a lot
Mm.
for
Yeah.
one of Chuck's movies. And so we weren't getting, uh, anybody interested. People liked the script, but this was just too expensive.
Yeah.
And then Chuck called me one day and he said, "Hey, there's this producer that is interested in the project, and can you go out to Malibu and meet him?" Like, sure, I'm going to be in Malibu. And it was Lance Hool, who had done, done some other independent pictures. So went out, had
Mm.
lunch with Lance, gave him the script, and Chuck called me there and said, "Hey, Lance read the script, really likes it, and we're going to go into this kind of new company. It's been around a while, but new guys took it over called Canon Films, and they want to make the movie. And I was like, oh my gosh. So Chuck said, their meeting's like tomorrow morning. I'll call you afterwards and, give you an update and so on.
Hmm.
So I'm waiting around, waiting for the phone to ring, and
Hmm.
day goes by. It gets early evening, and Chuck finally calls me. He says, well, what happened is I went in to meet him at this guy, Menachem Golan, and they want to do a script. They handed me a script called Missing in Action, but it wasn't the script you wrote. And he said he had me read it on the spot, and they want to do that movie, and I agreed to do it, and they're going to buy your script. So, and so I was really disappointed.
Hmm.
And so what found out later what happened is Lance had discovered that Canon was interested in the Missing in Action script by these other guys, but they hadn't optioned it yet. So
Right.
he optioned the night before they had a meeting with Chuck, Menachem and Chuck had the meeting. Lance optioned the script that they wanted. So it was actually a very smart move.
Hmm.
And so they ended up going down to St. Kitts in the Caribbean to make Missing in Action. So, and I get a call from Aaron. Aaron had come back to LA to pick up some equipment or something. He said, you've got to go down to St. Kitts tomorrow. They already want to do a sequel to this movie. They want you to write it, but they want you to write the trailer. We're going to shoot the trailer when we finish principal photography on this film. And like, okay. So I go to St. Kitts and basically, so I'm supposed to write a trailer, which there's really not a script other than the original script that I had written with Chuck and Aaron. So it took that. I figured out a trailer that would work. And luckily, I think Menachem probably prevailed and said, no, it's not a good idea to shoot the trailer now. Let's just. So basically, I reworked the original script to cut it down because it was Chuck and like 3 or 4 other guys and so on. And it was,
Right.
again, too big of a budget. So
Hmm.
I kind of reworked the script so it was, what ended up being shot. And so Chuck went to the Philippines with Joe Zito, the director, directed that movie, and came back and they were actually, I didn't know all this stuff at the time, found out later. So Canon originally had a deal with Warner Brothers to release Missing in Action, the Lance Hall movie.
Right.
And they showed Lance's movie to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers passed. And then they saw the rough cut for, not Warner Brothers, but Canon saw the rough cut for my Missing in Action and loved it. And they decided they were going to distribute the movie themselves theatrically for kind of the first time.
Okay.
And Warner Brothers, they found out later, ended up being upset. They would have loved to have that film, but so the Philippine Missing in Action came out first, was #1 and so on.
Right.
And then they put out the St. Kitts Missing in Action Part 2, the next year.
Yeah.
Even though it was, chronologically happened before.
Yeah.
So there's some inconsistencies in the storylines, but
There is a bit, yeah.
yeah, just a bit.
Because Jason's asking, what was the inspiration for this action? Was First Blood an influence?
No, not at all. Actually, it was again Pollock's book, Mission MIA, and the whole. And I think pretty much everyone in Hollywood read Pollock's book because a lot of pictures started coming out. That similar theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, First Blood didn't. No.
Yeah. Because there was something I heard that the Missing Action in the beginning, the prequel, was that the one that used that Canon saw the original Rambo sequel script and copied the idea from that, or is that something
I
that's
don't
not
I
true?
don't think so because, and I actually honestly don't know, but the guys that wrote uh, the prequel script, it was written a while before
Okay.
that was around him, and it was actually back in the day a little harder, not impossible, but harder to get access to things that were hot,
Okay.
especially before they come out.
Right. Because as Zami says, and everyone loves the immortal Christmas classic Invasion USA, because that's iconic poster right there, isn't it? So
Yes.
was that look in the script, or is that just something they came up with? The two guns and the holsters.
No, that was something we did in the script, just trying to come up with something, you know, uh, something memorable.
It definitely is. Because how much was cut out? Because I heard that the original script was focused more on the reporter's story, and then it was cut down just to the action.
Yeah, the original, the very original story was the reporter and then the CIA agent had, you know, much bigger roles, and actually the story part of the film was told through the reporter's eyes,
Right.
and that was all filmed, and then it was just decided not to use that. Uh, you know, I don't know why I wasn't privy to that thing. I saw and again, it's too bad because they didn't save copies of these,
Mm,
uh, you know, rough cuts or whatever you want to call them, director's
sure.
cuts. But the original cut was actually, I thought, much better. It made more sense story wise because the stuff that, again, the reporter's POV reporter was telling a lot of the things that were going on
Mm.
as the action stuff happened. So
Yeah, because was it
there's
the
probably half an hour, maybe more, it was cut out.
okay? That's a shame. Yeah, like you said, we'll never
Yeah,
see it.
yeah.
Unless someone's got a VHS copy or something of it. That's what usually happens, isn't
Well,
it?
I've asked over the years if whatever happened to because we know they had like a warehouse or two full of outtakes and everything, and
All
no
right.
one's ever come up with what happened to it or if it just got destroyed.
Mm, that's a shame. Yeah, I probably thought we don't need to keep this. It'll never
Yeah,
be useful.
yeah, exactly.
It's like yeah, was it the missing Nighthawks, Cobra, so many other films that I trimmed right down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Reader Movie's got a question for you. As far as he knows, he's an expert on movie books. Two of your screenplays have been novelized, and have you ever read them? And did you like what the authors did with
I I I have them. I
them?
have the copies. I've actually never, you know, I think I read a few pages and just, it was again canon being canon. One of those things. I think the first one I saw was for Invasion USA, and
Oh,
I just at a bookstore and saw it. I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. I said, oh, part of my contract is they're supposed to give me first option to write a book,
right.
and then they're also supposed to make a payment if something gets novelized. But they didn't do either one of those things, and it was so my my agent at the time really had a lot of interaction with Canon, and he was like, "Okay, you owe Bruner a payment for this thing." "Oh no, no, we didn't novelize it." "Well, yes, we did." "No, we didn't." He said, "We have 5 copies here." He said, "Oh no." Well, then he finally admitted, "Well, we did it, and it was printed, but it never left the warehouse." He said, "We bought 5 stock copies at the bookstore." Anyway, that was their MO and everything.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah. um, but so yeah, that was so you got two films in 1985. Sort of Heaven as well. You wrote that as
Oh
well.
yeah, yeah. Oh boy. Okay, I don't know if anyone's seen that, but hopefully not.
I saw it
Um,
today, so
oh, did
it's
you? Oh, I'm sorry.
I quite enjoyed it. I know
the,
it's
the,
crazy, but
the original script that was actually, we thought, really good. And we had a foreign sales agent in London that were promoting it and everything. And they ended up getting pushed out, and I was bought out. I was going to direct it, write it,
okay.
and I was bought out, and they rewrote the script and everything, and
Mm.
which was disappointing because the original was good. And Tadashi Yamashita is a lot of such amazing martial artist,
Mm.
but you have to, he needs the right, kind of like with Chuck, but a different thing. There's certain things you're good at that you need to, focus on that for your hero. And yeah, those sort of having went sideways, just put it mildly.
It did seem a bit different. Yeah, I did
Yeah,
suspect it was changed because unless did you write the bit with a nun in a wheelchair gets pushed off a cliff?
no, no, that was there were yeah. I saw the movie, but it was so long ago that I put it out of my mind for the most part. I just remember it going, "Oh my gosh, this could have been something."
I did see something that could have been there. Yeah, like you say.
Yeah,
It, but yeah, what they did with it was just generic
yeah.
action, martial
Hmm.
arts, and mysticism. But they didn't really go with any of the reasons behind it. Didn't know history or anything about the sword. It just a meteorite lands, someone turns into a sword, and then it turns up at the end. They're chasing it.
Yeah. So it was, needless to say, the original story was much better, but it was the executive producer was one of Tadashi's senior students, and
Ah,
he ended up starring in it and rewriting it and all this stuff. So
oh, I've got Ian Grant here. That it's interesting that you and your wife were asked by Richard D. Zanuck to pitch ideas for his production company. What do you have memories you have working for Richard, and what ideas did you pitch?
oh, great, awesome. We love. I have to say, worked with a lot of people through
Mm,
over the years in Hollywood. Our Richard was like probably the nicest and most professional of
mm,
anybody. Like, it's Richard Zanuck, right? So if you had a call or you had set up with him, if he couldn't make it, the secretary would call hours ahead of time. Sorry, Mr. Zanuck's got this. He's going to call you at this time, and always happened. Always took care.
oh,
Uh, and he had read a script. I finally convinced Elizabeth was always around during in the canon days. Menachem loved her, so
right.
she would get invited to all these meetings, and it would be like there's it's Lee Marvin and Chuck and me and Elizabeth, and I mean, it was so great. She always you know had editorial input in the scripts and stuff too, and I kept saying, we should write something. She was like, no, no, no. We finally talked her into writing a spec script, and Zanuck read that and read it personally, and
Okay.
really liked it. Really liked the writing, but he, didn't want to do that script, and so we went in and we pitched him several, 2 or 3 ideas. I can't remember what they were. He liked all of them, but he liked, uh, again, with my background in history, I always was interested in Pretty Boy Floyd, the American outlaw from the 30s.
Right.
And I had done a lot of research about him just by free time and different things. And in Wisconsin, he was involved in a famous shootout. It's a place called Little Bohemia in northern Wisconsin. And they preserved all the windows that the FBI had shot out. They had bullet holes. And so my dad would take me there when I was a kid. And so anyway, so we had developed a story about Floyd and pitched it to Richard, and he loved it, hired us to write it. And we it was just one of those things that unfortunately he had just done Driving Miss Daisy, and he gave the script to Bruce Barris for it. Bruce loved the script, said I want to do it, but I'm busy for like 2 years.
Mm.
And Richard said, oh, I don't want to wait. And one thing led to another, and it ended up, but it's still possible something could happen. It actually got to Graham King, who produced The Aviator and other pictures. Graham
Okay.
loved it. He offered to finance it, and with just a few years ago, with DiCaprio playing,
All right.
and for some reason MGM had the rights, turned around, it couldn't work that out, and then Graham came back a couple years later. Martin Scorsese had read the script, didn't want to direct it, wanted to produce it with Graham, couldn't get a deal with MGM at the time.
Mm.
So the good thing about it is it's since it's a period,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it can
Nothing can change the story.
hopefully we'll still get it made.
Yeah, that'd be good. Because I'm guessing. Do you have any other like canon scripts that you got you to write and then never produced?
Um, Delta Force 2, which,
I remember that coming out.
well, it started out with Delta Force came out successful, right? So wanted to do a sequel, and but Menachem loved Michael Winner, and he
Mm.
wanted Michael to direct it. So called me, said, I needed to go to London, just over the weekend and for, 3 or 4 days, meet with Michael Winner, talk about the script, come back and write it, we're going to make it. So great. So I didn't know anything about Michael. I liked, the number of his pictures and everything, but, and so he invites me over to his house, which was, National Historical Register, and it's beautiful. Oh my gosh, gorgeous place. And I get there, and guy opens the door, and it's kind of middle-aged guy and slender with glasses, and he's kind of like this. He's got kind of not totally shaking, but
Hmm.
very, you know,
Twitchy.
nervous tics, I guess you'd call it.
Hmm.
I said, okay, Michael, let me take you to meet him. So going up these stairs, and went by, there's a maid dusting away. Same thing, kind of these nervous tics. And I thought,
Okay.
it's kind of unusual. Okay.
Yeah.
So he had his office on the second floor, overlooking, the front walkway, doorway, big open windows and everything. And he's typical, as I found out, his feet up on the desk, smoking a cigar. And one of the first things he said to me was, he says, well, you probably noticed that the people that work for me are a you know, little nervous and so on. I said, yeah, I did notice that. And he said, well, it's probably because how I treat them. He said, what would you do if I treated you like that? And I said, I'd pick you up and throw you out this window. And he leaned back, took out his cigar. And I was his best friend from it. But, however, that had the drawbacks. So we decided that I should stay in London and write the script. And I was supposed to write 10 pages a day, come to his house in the morning, and he would go over the pages. Like, okay, well, we'll give it a try. And so the routine was I would work into the night, 10 pages, go over to his place. He'd read them, say, oh, this is shit, this is shit. And he would rewrite it. So eventually we got to the end of the script. And the good part about it is Canon felt so bad that I had to stay there, even though they're paying me, that they paid for Elizabeth and her daughter to come to London for a week, and they got to see the country and everything, which was great. But I got back to Los Angeles. I walked into the story editor's office, big office, tons of people working there. Everybody stopped working and looked at me, and somebody said, Delta Force 2, what the hell happened to you? And I was like, I didn't write it. I asked Michael Winner rewrote the script, and they're like, oh, God. And so they ended up just not even, They did Colombian Connection or something.
Yeah, it's got a few names, I think, before it came out, wasn't it? But
Yeah,
yeah, you get story credit, I think. Characters credit, I
yeah.
believe.
So
But
there,
sorry.
I was going to say, and it turned out, Lee Marvin, his asthma was so bad,
Mm.
he wouldn't have been unfortunately able to do another picture. But we had it was a good. The original, once again, the original script was good and more in line of actual Delta Force.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that makes more sense than what we actually got. Because yeah, talking about the original Delta Force, it's it. Didn't Benayem do a film in the 70s about a terrorist attack on a plane?
Yeah, that Operation Thunderbolt,
That's it.
and what happened, how Delta Force really came about is when I was writing the original Missing in Action with Chuck before anybody else was involved.
Right.
Um, he had a line producer that was interested in helping with it, and he introduced me to a retired special forces guy named James Monahan. And Monahan was Green Beret, special ops, like 5 tours in Vietnam and so on.
Mm.
So he knew everything about the real stories that was going on with the MIAs and so on. So we
Mm.
became like best friends. He ended up being best friend at my best man at my wedding,
Oh.
and he told us about the Delta Force because at that time it was secret,
Mm.
and he had actually helped train the original unit.
Hmm.
So he said, you should pitch that story, and they should make a movie about these guys because it's amazing. And so pitched it to Menachem, and he's like, no, no, yeah, that's still good. So I get this call from Menachem like months later, and he had seen an article, I think, in the New York Times, like just a paragraph or something, and it said something about America's super secret warriors, the Delta Forces. Jimmy, yep, I got an idea. You do it, the Delta Force, Chuck Norris, Charles Bronson. You want to write this? And I'm like, yeah, are you kidding? Chuck and Bronson. Oh my gosh, Delta Force. So that I started working on, wrote a story and everything. You liked the story, and I guess I never really found out what happened. I guess they couldn't come to an agreement with
Mm.
Bronson or something, and so it ended up. And then the actual TWA hijacking happened in real life, and Menachem said, "Oh, stop, stop! We're going to do the movie." Because we figured Delta was going to get involved in that
Right.
somehow. So he said, we won't have an ending because we don't know what it was, but we're going to write the script. You're going to base it on what's actually going on in real life, fictionalized.
Mm.
And so he decided because of Operation Thunderbolt that he was going to direct the movie as well. Zito was supposed to direct it,
Okay.
and I have to say, if it had been Zito directing with Chuck and Bronson, it would have been, and with the storyline we had, it would have been an awesome action picture. Anyway,
Nice. Yeah, because I think wasn't the original Delta Force mission was they didn't do as well as the Delta Force in the film.
right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's we started out with that in the movie.
Okay.
They made
Yeah.
it into Iran, and then accidents
Mm.
and everything. But we actually had. I probably shouldn't say, but we had people that were active in Delta that were telling Monahan stuff that we could put in the picture
Okay.
because and unfortunately ended up Menachem wanted to
Mm.
put in Israeli techniques because they were better, but we had stuff that the Delta guys had been doing, but they weren't current. They weren't. It was in the past, so we
Sure.
could have used it in the picture, but that didn't work out. But that's
Yeah, because
that's what happens.
Yeah, which is unusual. It's an unusual film for canon in the 80s because it's almost 2 hours, and then there's a lot of build up in the plane for the first over hour or so, isn't there, before the real action kicks off, which is not like them. But
Absolutely. And, we're speaking of director's cuts and everything.
hmm.
There's actually an almost 6 hour version that, uh, and Elizabeth and I, we invited to go to the screening. Menachem had done his director's cut.
Oh,
And again, it's one of those things where it's a shame that it wasn't preserved because there was a lot of stuff that was, you know, cut out. The final, and a lot more character development with the Delta guys and
hmm.
even the passengers and even the terrorists and so on. And that all, you know, disappeared into wherever wherever it's going.
Yeah. Someone will open a storage unit one day and find it, I hope.
Yeah, hopefully.
This has been paying the bills for years. Do you ever visit any of the sets when you were?
Yeah, I was for Invasion,
Mm.
and then I had to with Delta Force actually. Menachem had Elizabeth and I go to Israel because he wanted to. We were literally in pre-production as we're writing the script,
Right.
and I had to. We had to leave to come back to do another picture before shooting started. So we didn't really weren't on the set there, but we were on locations like there's the school where the hostages are held.
Mm.
So I'd written all this stuff again. Jim Monahan helped with some ideas and so on. So I'd written all this stuff out about how the Delta guy's going to get in there and say so. But Menachem just now see we walk into the basement of the school. The ceilings were quite high,
Mm.
and the hostages are going to be in the room above. So it was a question of how to get Delta operators from the basement into the room. And so he said, Menachem said, there's only a couple ideas. What do you think? One was to have the blow a hole in the floor, so there's a hole. There's a mini trampoline. The guys run across the floor, bump, fly up through the thing into the room. It's like, oh my God. Ah. And the other one was to have like one of those teeter-totter things like in the circus where somebody's
Oh, this.
standing here, somebody
Yeah.
jumps and it catapults him up into the room. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to look so ridiculous. And said, well, what they really would do is they would build pyramid kind of thing, bomb blanket, and just
Yeah.
stand up into the room. And so, oh, okay, that's a good idea. So,
Oh, you ruined it.
yeah. But he used to, I would spend all day at his office with him, literally shoulder to shoulder. I'd be typing and stuff. I'd go back to the hotel, come back the next day. He'd stayed up most of the night rewriting. So I would have to start with his rewrite and try to go, okay.
All right.
I finally said to him, why don't we share the writing credit? Oh, okay. But anyway.
Nice. Because was there close to a Delta Force 2000 TV show?
Yes, we had again just with Monahan's connections, nothing official because they can't do that.
Sure.
But we had one of the main guys involved was a really good friend of Monahan, so we were getting stuff again that was okay to use. So it would have been we almost got it off the ground with well, actually, yeah, we
Mhm.
almost got it off the ground with CBS a couple of places, and it just ended up, not working out. The typical Hollywood thing, no real
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
And I actually was hired by Canon to do a series. CBS wanted to do a Delta Force series after the movie came out, and I got hired with Monahan, uh, helping to write a pilot script,
Mm.
and it was going to be, weekly CBS series, which would have been great.
Yeah.
And Menachem I had a falling out with him over something, and so he pulled the
Right.
plug on that, which was, a
Yeah.
bad move. But anyway,
Yeah, because an 80s TV action show, Delta Force would have been, yeah, very big, I'd imagine.
yeah.
But never mind. Might still happen. But
Yep.
yes, when writing screenplays, do you envision certain actors for a part, and did they come true?
Um, it depends on if it's a speculative screenplay.
Right.
Generally, don't write it with any specific actor in mind, just because you never know, uh, you know, who it's going to go to, or who you can get, and so on. If it's like the stuff with Cannon, it was
Mhm.
Chuck was going to be the star, so I knew, okay, he's good at certain things, he's not so good at other things, so we've got to, figure out how to make the best story work in the circumstances. But generally, uh, like Pretty Boy Floyd writing for Richard Zanuck,
Mm.
there was no actor in mind really at the time. It was just these are the characters, and actually there were two male leads early 30s, two female leads early 30s. It was like it's a really good piece for actors. There's a number of people that could do it,
Mm.
over the years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cool. Just have a look at this. So when you write your screenplays for like Missing Action and Invasion USA, do you write the action, or do they go to like with the Bond films, the stunt people take over when like there's a shootout or something like that?
I learned on an eye for an eye, because
Okay.
again, having a martial arts background is writing in every punch and kick and all this stuff. And
Right.
then, you know, so in later scripts, it's unless there's something really specific that, is some kind of you're setting up some movement, or they're paying off something. It's generally, you know, the truck crashes through the mall and blah blah, stuff more general, and then the
Right.
stunt coordinator and everything takes it and figures out what they can do, and then there's budgetary considerations and so on.
Hmm.
Um, for Invasion, what happened with that is Joe Zito took me along on his location scout. Excuse me. So I was able to see, like, the neighborhood that ends up getting blown up.
Hmm.
They were extending the Atlanta airport. They're going to bulldoze the houses. So we're like, can we blow them up? They're like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Oh my gosh, it's like a zillion dollars of production value.
Hmm.
And the same thing with the shopping mall. They were going to renovate the mall. Says, can we just smash everything? Yeah, well, yeah, go ahead. So it's
Amazing.
they just had to dress the sets and literally could do full on real, no green screen,
Yeah.
mayhem and destruction. So
Hmm.
uh, in those cases, but again, didn't necessarily write super specific for those, but unless there were character interactions, like
Yeah.
there's the with the an invasion with the suburban thing with the little girl with the Christmas tree and all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's written, and then
Right. And then they blow her up.
but yeah,
But yeah, okay, that's good. Um, Now there's one more. Sorry, two more Vietnam films. One of them is POW: The Escape in '86. What was that one like? Did you have to write for Carradine? Because was it originally written with Chuck in mind, or was it just always going to be Carradine?
I don't. They had. I'm trying to remember now. They probably were hoping it was going to be Chuck,
Right.
And then maybe Michael Dudikoff
Mm.
and Carradine didn't come up. At least I didn't know. Maybe they had to deal with him. But I didn't know when I, you know, did my work on it.
Sure.
Uh, so that was, and I think people have heard this anecdote, but the director Gideon Amir, uh, Menachem got a hold of him after seeing the first dailies, and he said, "I hired you to deliver a Volkswagen, and you're giving me a Mercedes." So it was like, now we're cutting the budget and the time. So
Doesn't sound like canon.
yeah,
But but yeah, because it's a crazy film. Carradine was just laying waste to half of Vietnam.
yeah, and it was a thing too where um, I I always say that Canon was my film school since I didn't really get to film school,
Hmm.
and like on that picture I got called in because they realized that there were some story holes. They're probably still in the final, but they had like we have David Carradine for one day, and we have these sets. Can you figure something? Look at the look at the film, and can you figure something out? Try to tie stuff together. I don't even remember what it was, but I did that, and
Nice.
they shot what they needed to, I guess.
Yeah. As I say, have you written a film where the soldiers can shoot straight? Because
Yeah.
in all of these films, they just open fire and then the hero turns around and just one
Oh
shot
yeah.
bullet each. Just yeah, but then the film would be over pretty soon if they got their shot off.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, yeah. It's like with Delta Force and the way they operate in real life. It's like periods. Boom, done. It's not very rare to have any extended firefights for
Yeah,
sure.
because was the Delta Force motorcycle with its rocket launchers and machine guns? Is that a real thing that they use?
No, that
Oh,
was yeah. Well, who knows? Now maybe it is. I don't know,
well, yes, we haven't seen it.
but I
Just
don't think no. Back then they had the FAVs, the fighting vehicles, and you could literally blow the front wheel off, and they could still
oh,
do their job.
ah,
So, and I'm sure they have even better stuff now. But
oh yes. Well, I think yeah, Bronson's got the similar motorbike in Assassination as well, hasn't he? With the machine guns and rockets on as well.
yeah,
Someone had the same idea. And then we get to two films in '88. We got Braddock, Missing Action 3, which is that your last canon film?
yes,
I guess because yeah, they were starting to go under then, weren't they? For the
yeah. It was that started out sequel to Missing in Action,
mm.
and I thought the original script I thought was the best script of the whole bunch, and it went through. And again, Zito was going to direct that,
Right.
and they went through different directors. They had other people writing on it,
Mm.
and because it had probably the most emotional connection for the audience with Chuck and the son,
Yep.
and I remember one of the drafts somebody gave me was he's going to rescue his son who's like in bad shape over in Vietnam, right?
Mm.
And but in this script, the son was when Chuck comes into this condo and the son's fixing his 10-speed bicycle. It's like that's not very oppressed or anything. It's like
That is very different to what happens. Yeah.
so that unfortunately it maintained some of the elements and everything, but it lost. I didn't care. I thought the villain was overdone. So that's just me.
Yeah, he was over the top, just
Yeah,
Braddock.
yeah,
But yeah, and then turning up with the biggest helicopter ever,
yeah.
and still doesn't get him. But yeah, and then So was it your idea to kill his wife off, or?
Well, that was, and there's people have pointed out, and honestly, at the time, didn't even think about it. There's continuity problems if you look at all three of the movies with how we started that, but we had to kill the wife at the beginning, or think you killed the wife off at the beginning, so
Yes.
that
Oh yes, yes, yes.
you know, and so it had to start that way, even though it kind of messed with the storyline of the other pictures. But you know, I
Yeah,
don't
I
think
mean,
any of us even caught that at the time.
I did think that when I've seen them, I thought, well, if he's there and then that's there and then he's got a wife
Hmm.
then, but he doesn't know about her then. But yeah, but in these in this world, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Uh, and then we get Silent Assassins. Is it original story on that one?
yeah, that was a script that I wrote an early script that I wrote. It was going to be Tadashi Yamashita and Mel Novak, who I
Okay.
became friends with, from An Eye for an Eye,
Hmm.
and some a producer, I can't remember, Simon Ree or something, bought the script, and then they did, you know, rewrote it
Yeah.
and did a
Yeah.
movie with nothing to do with the original story.
I
So
didn't think it did the
I'm
way
glad
they
they I'm,
went.
I'm glad they bought it, but it was like, okay, well, it's completely different original.
Yeah. Well, the poster's not even correct because it's got it's Sam Jones and a gun, and then it's got Linda Blair with a gun. So you think it's like those two is the main action stars, but she's just a girlfriend that comes in and out of the film every so often, and then the other guy is not even on the poster; is on his partner,
Yeah.
and he does all the fighting. But yeah, uh, do you own any of the films? Do you ever rewatch them and
I
criticize them or say, "Oh, that was good"?
oh yeah, I mean, I have uh I have all of them, going back to the original VHS copies, and then
Cool.
DVD, then Blu-ray, and then uh, they just came out. Vinegar Syndrome just came out with the Invasion USA uh,
Mm,
4K remaster and everything.
yeah,
And I don't have a deck to play it, so I haven't seen the actual. It's supposed to be really. They did an amazing job on
yeah,
that.
they do very
So,
good work.
uh, and it's so yeah. I have everything in the different formats, and although I haven't watched anything all the way through for a while.
uh, let's have a look. So yes, so on the complete opposite to like canon action films, you've done B Swing Makes Friends, children's book.
Yes, yeah. My wife started out with, and our daughter was in karate, and when she was gonna, she would get nervous like everybody in martial arts when you're having a belt test.
Right.
So Elizabeth said to her one day, just the top of her head, said, think of your doubts as Mr. D, and if you start getting worried, just in your mind, shout really out, "Go away, Mr. D." And so Jennifer was like, "Yeah, okay, Mom." And then after the test, she came up and said, "I did it. And it worked. It worked. It really worked." So I told Elizabeth, said, "You should write it as a children's book because it's a
Yeah.
good thing." And
Hmm.
many years later, I convinced her to do it. So she wrote a book called, Mr. D, which is about a young girl testing for a belt and the whole thing with Mr. D and go away. And
Uh-huh.
then we had another idea for a kid's character called Beeswing, and Beeswing makes friends about kids moving to a new place and having to make friends and all this stuff with this little magical dragon and all that fun stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very, very different from explosions and and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So which is more pressure, writing with your wife, or Menachem Golem or Michael Winner? Do
Well,
you ever?
I, I got I got along so well with Monaco and with Michael. that really. But my wife is way smarter than I am,
Right.
and pretty much every producer or director we've worked with ends up calling her the logic police because you're in a story meeting and you're going, "Oh yeah," and then he does this and he goes over and does that, and she's going, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and then she goes, "Oh, wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
If we do that, then we have to change the scene, two scenes back, scene at the beginning, and change the whole thing." Like, oh man. So let's come up with a different way to do that. So
Right.
it actually it works out really. We complement each other writing wise, but she's a very tough critic, so which is good. So it makes
Well,
the
yeah, that's what
cast,
you need, isn't it?
well, yeah, and it's and I say loved working with Canon. People love the pictures to this day. I mean, they're popular all over the world, and
Mhm.
but we went from doing that to working for Richard Zanuck, so on a whole different level. So uh, it really it's been really good.
Ah, that's nice. Yeah. Well, yes. Me and everyone on my channel certainly love your films.
I
Even
appreciate
some
it.
of the ones you didn't exactly write the whole thing for. uh,
It's lots of fun.
yeah. So we'll just wrap this. This seems to be a good point to wrap this up. So, Planet Hag says hi, James. Great to see you here. Another fan.
Well,
But
thank you.
so yeah, I'm out of questions now. So I'd like
Okay.
to thank you for doing this. It was amazing to meet you and pick your
Oh,
brains
same
about
here.
these
You're
films.
very, very welcome, Gareth. I love doing it. It was good.
All
Lots of
right.
fun too.
No, thank you. So we'll wrap this up, and I will say enjoy the rest of your day as it's early over there. It's
I'll do that.
time for bed here. So I'll say thank you
Okay.
again, and good night to everyone, and thanks for people in the chat for joining us. And have a good day and night wherever you are.